Hello and welcome to the Black Cat Bushcraft channel. One of my favorite aspects of bushcrafting is being able to identify wild edible and medicinal plants and trees. Today what I wanted to do was a quick little scout down the edge of this wood line here behind me and just see what kind of resources I can spot, whether it be edible or medicinal plants and some trees. It's been at least a year since I've walked this particular stretch of woods. This is on my family's land, and I remember some of the things I spotted last year, but I'm sure that my knowledge of the plants and trees has grown since then, so I just wanted to see what kind of things I might be able to spot this year. I figured I'd bring you guys along with me. We'll make some stops along the way, and I'll point out some of the things that I see. Stick with me, and I'm going to start walking. Well, if you can't tell by looking at my face, it is extremely hot. When I got out of my truck, it was 95 degrees, and it's supposed to be 98 today. So it's pretty sweltering out here. Right off the bat, some of the things that I see here in front of me is pokeweed. I don't consider pokeweed to be an edible plant because there's a lot of preparation involved in eating that. And anything that's not edible, either just simply cooked or eaten raw, is not something that I want to mess with. But I do see a lot of that pokeweed here on our land. Right away, you're going to see something here that you're going to see a lot of, and that's this muscadine vine. And there is a ton of this stuff on our land. We have a lot of these things. They're pretty much just all the way down the wood line, as much as you want to see. Alright, so I did find one edible here, and it is also medicinal. This plant here is dewberry. And I recently did a video on that, and obviously the berries would be edible, and also the leaves can be used medicinally. And like I said, I did a video so you can get more information about that. But I also see right back here, this is not dewberry. I'm not sure if you guys can see it or not. Let me zoom in. This one that looks very similar, it's not dewberry, it's actually blackberries. Notice it's quite a bit higher up off the ground, and notice the vine that it's growing from. That big thick briary vine right there, that's definitely a blackberry vine. And another thing that distinguishes the two is dewberries have 3 leaves on the plant always, whereas blackberries may have 3, 5, 7, and I do see a couple of 5s there. I see several 3s as well. I don't see a 7, but that's one of the edibles there. That's blackberry. Alright, I thought I'd give you a better look at the blackberry vine since I mentioned it. In the center of the screen is a grouping of 3 leaves. This is a blackberry. And if we follow that vine down, you can see right there below it is a group of 5. And it's a little hard to see with all that brush. There's a good look at a grouping of 5. And on this particular blackberry, I don't see a grouping of 7. 5 is as much as I see. But I did want to show you what that looks like. How you'll have different numbered clusters on the plant. 3s and 5s on this particular one. Alright, here's one more little edible that I found on the side of the woods down on the ground low. This is greenbrier. Some people might call it catbrier, I believe. And one of the edible portions of this are these little tendrils. And I've eaten these many times. It's not much to them, but it kind of tastes like a green bean. And it's got a little vitamin, mineral content to it. Another thing you can eat off of these, this is the same thing, is you can eat this very young, tender growth. And it kind of tastes like a green bean, but it has a little bit more of a sour flavor in it as well. But just something quick that you can munch when you see it. Here's some more ripe dewberries. Well, of course, we talked about those before. This is a really good look at a medicinal plant. This is goldenrod, and this whole patch here is goldenrod. And it might be a little bit difficult to identify when it's not in bloom. You can see here that later in the year, it's going to bloom out. We've got a bloom starting to form there. But recently I took a wilderness first aid class and medicinal plants class at the Pathfinder School, and one of the things we talked about there was that goldenrod is good to help stop the bleeding on shallow cuts, capillary type bleeding. Poulticed up, this stuff can actually help the blood to coagulate and create a clot and stop that type of bleeding. So definitely a good one to know. Here's a medicinal we could talk about, which is that little pine tree right there. You can see there's not many pines right in this little area. It's mostly hardwoods, but that's one that's coming up. And of course the pine needles make tea, which are good for vitamin A, vitamin C. I've got a video talking about pine needle tea. Here's another good look at some bunches of muscadines here. You can see the grapes forming in those clusters. So there's going to be a lot of those if all goes well. There's so many good things here, and I'm sure that there's probably things that you may see that I'm not even mentioning, so please feel free to make comments if you see something I just looked over, because it's really hard to see everything when you're walking like this. Down here on the ground is a good specimen of what I call wild violet or swamp violet, and it's edible. You can eat this young, tender growth, and you can also eat the flowers. They have a nice flavor to them, actually. The flowers are already gone, bloomed and gone for this year. But this greenery could all be used as an edible, and it can also be used as a medicinal. These leaves can be cut up and used as an infusion, and it has a mucilaginous quality to it. If you mash it up, you can kind of feel it's got a little bit of a slimy feel to it. And so if you were, let's say you were constipated or something like that, this might be a good remedy for that, kind of help get things moving with that mucilage in it. That would help to get things moving again. So it'd be good as a digestive aid. All right, right here in this particular area, it's a little bit low and it's holding water a lot. And you can see how those plants there look kind of muddy. And so there's a little bit different growth in this area. And that's where the violets are. We also have right here one of my favorite little edibles, and that's wood sorrel. And this is actually yellow wood sorrel. We also have a purple wood sorrel in this area too. And just behind it, you see Indian strawberry, or some people call it mock strawberry, and those berries are edible. They just have a very bland flavor, but they're pleasant to me. Also, you can see the leaves from that plant, and here's a good look at it. They're clusters of 3. A lot of times we think leaves of 3, leave it be, but in this case that can actually be used as an infusion for a tea. I've never done that, so it's not something that I've utilized before, but I've eaten many of those little mock strawberries right there. Can't get a clear view on it. There you go. You can see the strawberry behind the wood sorrel. Wood sorrel is delicious. It tastes like kind of like a lemon. It's got a citrusy flavor to it. It's a cooling herb, so it would be good for any kind of condition where you wanted to have more of a cooling sensation. All right, this here is a fantastic medicinal. This is a black willow tree. Black willow and all willow really just grows near water, so that's a good indication that this drainage ditch, just about 50 feet through this thick brush right here, is definitely holding water most of the time. But this is an excellent medicinal. The inner bark can be boiled down into a decoction and used as a painkiller, as willow contains salicylic acid, I believe I said that correctly, which is the main ingredient in aspirin. So this is a great resource to have in the case where I have pain. I can utilize this in the same way that I would use aspirin as a relief. Here's a nice resource that I talked about recently and did a video on how to make honeysuckle tea. And here's a honeysuckle vine, really nice looking one. Beautiful flowers there. So that's obviously a good resource. We got nice leaves, a lot of young growth on that. And again, quite a bit of nice ripe flowers. All right, growing through the edge of the wood line here is a small black cherry tree. Be a close-up right here. You see that bark. Leaves are real shiny looking on the black cherry. And the inner bark is good as a medicinal. As a decoction, it can be used for cough syrup. Definitely something good for you to do some research on if you're not familiar with. But that is the black cherry. Not many of those around here. All right, here's a look at another low-lying plant. This one is yellow dock. And this is the yellow dock right here. It's very similar and characteristic to what's called curly dock, which in my area is starting to die off right now and turn brown. If I get an opportunity, I'll show you that. But there's several of these little yellow dock plants growing right here in this one area. It's not many, it's just this one little cluster. There's several of them. You can see that they're starting to dry up. So they're not doing well. This one looks a lot better. But that is the yellow dock plant, and it is edible and also has medicinal qualities to it as well. So this is a lot bigger plant, and here in the shade it's in better shape than that was out in direct sunlight. You can see what the top of that, I guess you would call it the flower, looks like. And that resembles a lot the curly dock that we see so much of around here. And we definitely have more curly dock than we do yellow dock. That stuff has just started to die off. These are really big leaves. Here's my palm. You can see it's big. There's a smaller specimen right here. That's normally the largest that I see, so this one's exceptionally large. Look at this one. It's literally as big as my foot. Big leaves there. I know I mentioned wood sorrel before, but man, this is the mother lode of wood sorrel here. About 90% of what you're seeing right now is all wood sorrel. Definitely a lot of that to be collected here. All right, from a medicinal plant standpoint, this is going to be one of my most exciting finds today. This is jewelweed. And jewelweed is quite rare on my family property. In fact, I don't know of another spot where we have jewelweed growing. But for some reason in this one little corner here, it's kind of taken over this little area. And I'm excited to find this. Jewelweed is actually known as being the natural remedy for poison ivy. And I don't really know that it's a remedy for poison ivy, but it does have antihistamine properties and anti-inflammatory properties to it. So it helps to relieve the symptoms of poison ivy, poison oak, sumac, bug bites, stings, things like that. This jewelweed does a great job of helping to relieve those symptoms with the antihistamine and anti-inflammatory properties. So this one I will definitely come back and collect some. I have a future video that I hope to film utilizing this plant as a medicinal. Very excited to find this jewelweed. Alright, it's quite ironic that within 20 feet of the jewelweed I would walk up on what I believe is stinging nettle. Now, I've not had a lot of experience with stinging nettle. It's not something I've found a whole lot on our land, but I am 95% sure that's what this is. I've looked at it many times in pictures and seen videos on it and studied it in the wild edible guides. And it is an edible plant. You just have to be careful when handling it, and you have to cook it first to neutralize whatever it is in it that stings you. And it's also said that oftentimes stinging nettle and jewelweed grow in the same areas, and that if you get the stings from the stinging nettle in your hand or in your skin, that the best remedy is jewelweed. So it's ironic that I see these two right here together, and that all the more leads me to believe that that's what this is. So those of you that know stinging nettle well, please give me a comment. Just tell me for sure if that's what this is, but I really think that this is a stinging nettle. It is just like the pictures that I've looked at. All right, I did just catch a glimpse of this sticking out. This is a mulberry tree, and it's a very young growth of mulberry. There's not many mulberries here either, so it's just kind of neat that this has sprung up. And mulberries are already gone for the year in this area. If we'd have caught this maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month ago, we could have gotten some berries off of it possibly. Love mulberries. I used to eat them a lot when I was a kid. We had the tree in our yard. But I want you to notice the distinct different leaves. So you have this type of leaf. It reminds me of a fig leaf. But then you're going to have some that look a little different, like this. Actually, here we go. Like these. Almost kind of resemble that mitten like you would see on a sassafras. And then there are some leaves that are just standard leaves, like that. So some people may mistake this for sassafras, but once you see the two, compare them, you can see there's very distinct differences between them. Anyway, that would be a good edible plant if we caught it in season, mulberry. All right, this last tree that we're looking at here is probably one of the most important where medicinals are concerned that we've looked at. This is the black walnut tree, and black walnuts obviously will fall into the edible category as well. But you can see here these green black walnuts that are up here. And this tree is actually loaded down with them, and we have multiple trees right here in this little area. And these black walnut hulls, the green hulls, are very useful for many different things. They can be made into a medicinal, which I'm going to talk at in great detail about in an upcoming video. We're going to harvest these and prepare them and talk about the benefits and elements that it can be used for. But also it can be utilized as a dye. It makes a nice dark brown dye when you use a lot of these green hulls and boil them down. So anyway, this is the black walnut tree, and again, we'll look at that in a lot more detail in a very soon upcoming video. One thing I wanted to mention as we finish up our little hike here is you'll notice that as we went past these plants, some of them fell in the medicinal category, some fell into the edible category, and some were both. And where the medicinal side of things came into play, I didn't talk too much in detail about what ailments these plants or trees could be used to treat. And I didn't talk really at all about the preparation in detail of how to prepare and utilize these plants. Part of that is because I plan to, in some future videos, while these resources are still available in this season, to go back on certain ones and demonstrate the harvest, preparation, and usage and talk more in detail about individual ones. But also, I really wanted to show the plants with a quick scout. Maybe that'll help you to identify some resources you might have available in your area. And it will give you a baseline of some plants and trees that you might want to do some further research on and how to utilize them as edibles or medicinals yourself. The key to anything where it comes to wild plants being medicinal or edible is to do proper research. Always verify them in 3 or more ways, and always consult somebody who has actual hands-on knowledge with these particular plants. All right, well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to come along with me on this little scout. We had a chance to look at a lot of good natural resources, edibles and medicinals, trees and plants. A lot of the plants that we looked at are basically one-season plants, so they're here during the late spring or summer. So I hope to be talking about several of the ones that we looked at today more in detail, especially where the medicinal side of things comes into play. I want to take advantage of these resources while they're available to me. I know that we'll be talking about that black walnut tree in the next coming up video, hopefully, so that's something to look forward to as well. I've got a thundercloud coming up behind me, and it's starting to drizzle a little rain, so I guess it's time to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys' interest. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and I'll be talking to you with another video as soon as possible. Until then, take care, and God bless.